The Magic Book. There was once an old couple named Peter and Kirsten who had an only son named Hans. From the time he was a little boy, he had been told that on his 16th birthday he must go out into the world and serve his apprenticeship. So, one fine summer morning, he started off to seek his fortune with nothing but the clothes he wore on his back. For many hours he trudged on merrily, now and then stopping to drink from some clear spring or to pick up some ripe fruit from a tree. Then little wild creatures peeped at him from beneath bushes, and he nodded and smiled and wished them good morning. After he had been walking for some time, he met an old white-bearded man who was coming along a footpath. The boy would not step aside, and the man was determined not to do so either, so they ran against each other with a bump.
"It seems to me," said the old fellow, "that the boy should give way to an old man."
"The path is for me as well as for you," answered young Hans saucily, for he had never been taught politeness.
"Well, that's true," answered the other mildly. "And where are you going?"
"I'm going into service," said Hans.
"Then you can come and serve me,"
replied the man. Well, Hans could do that, but what would his wages be?
£2 a year, and nothing but to keep some rooms clean," said the newcomer.
This seems to Hans to be easy enough, so he agreed to enter the old man's service, and they set out together. On their way they crossed a deep valley and came to a mountain where the old man opened a trap door, and bidding Hans follow him, he crept in and began to go down a long flight of steps. When they got to the bottom, Hans saw a large number of rooms lit by many lamps and full of beautiful things. While he was looking around, the old man said to him,
"Now, you know what you have to do. You must keep these rooms clean, and strew sand on the floor every day. There's a table where you will always find food and drink, and there's your bed. You see, there are a great many suits of clothing hanging on the wall, and you may wear what you please, but remember you're never to open this locked door. If you do, ill will befall you. Farewell, I'm going away again, and cannot tell you when I may return."
No sooner had the man disappeared than Hans sat down to a good meal, and after that he went to bed and slept until morning. At first he could not remember what had happened to him, but by and by he jumped up and went into the rooms, which he examined carefully. "How foolish to bid to put sand on the floors," he thought, "when there is nobody here but myself. I shall do nothing of the sort." And so he shut the doors quickly and only cleaned and set in order his own room. After the first few days he felt that it was unnecessary too, because no one came there to see if the rooms were clean or not. At last he did no work at all, but just sat and wondered what was behind the locked door, till he determined to go and look for himself. The key turned easily in the lock. Hans entered, half frightened at what he was doing, and the first thing he beheld was a heap of bones. That was not very cheerful, and he was going out again when his eye fell on a shelf of books. He was a good way in passing time, he thought, and he was fond of reading, and he took one of the books from the shelf. It was all about magic, and told you could change yourself into anything in the world you liked. Could anything be more exciting or useful? So he put it in his pocket and ran quickly away out of the mountain by a little door which had been left open. When he got home, his parents asked him what he had been doing and where he had got the fine clothes he wore. "Oh, I earned them myself," answered he. "You never earned them in such short of a time," said his father. "Be off with you. I won't keep you here. I will have no thieves in my house." "Well, I only came to help you," replied the boy sulkily. "Now I'll be off as you wish, but tomorrow morning when you rise you will see a great dog at the door. Do not drive it away, but take it to the castle and sell it to the Duke, and they will give you $10 for it. Only you must bring the strap you lead it with back to the house." Sure enough, the next day a dog was standing at the door, waiting to be let in. The old man was rather afraid of letting get into trouble, but his wife urged him to sell the dog, as the boy had bidden him. So he took it up to the castle and sold it to the Duke. for $10. But he did not forget to take off the strap which had led the animal and carry it home. When he got there, old Kirsten met him at the door.
"Well, Peder, have you sold the dog?" asked she.
Yes, Kirsten, and I brought back $10, as the boy told us, answered Peder.
"Aye, that's fine," said his wife. "Now go and see what one gets by doing one as one bid. If you had not been for me, you would have driven the dog away, and you should have lost the money. After all, I always know what is best."
"Nonsense!" cried her husband. "Women always think they know best. I should have sold the dog. Same, just whatever you told me. Put the money away in the safe place, and don't talk so much." The next day Hans came again, but though everything had turned out as he had foretold, he found that his father was not quite satisfied. "Be off with you," he said. "You'll get us into trouble."
"I haven't helped you enough yet," replied the boy. "Tomorrow there will be a great fat cow as big as a house. Take it to the king's palace, and you'll get as much as $1,000 for it. Only you must unfasten the halter you lead it and bring it back here. And don't return by the high road, but through the forest."
The next day, when the couple rose, they saw an enormous head looking through their bedroom window, and behind it was a cow which was nearly as big as their hut. Kirsten was wild with joy to think the money the cow would bring them.
"But how are you going to put the rope over the head?" asked she.
"Wait, and you'll see, mother," answered her husband. And Peder took the ladder that led up to the hayloft and set it against the cow's neck, and he climbed up and slipped the rope over its head. When he made sure that the noose was fast, he started to the palace, and met the king himself walking on the grounds. "I heard that the princess is going to be married," said Peters, "so I brought your majesty a cow which is bigger than any cow you've ever seen. Will your majesty deign to buy it?" The king, in truth, had never seen so large a beast, and he willingly paid the $1,000 for it, which was the price demanded. But Peder remembered to take off the halter before he left. After he had gone, the king sent a butcher and told him to kill the animal for the wedding feast. The butcher got ready a pole-axe, but just as he was going to strike, the cow changed itself into a dove and flew away, and the butcher just stood staring after it as if he had turned to stone. However, as the dove could not be found, he was obliged to tell the king what had happened, and the king sent his dispatchers to capture the old man and bring him back. But Peder was safe in the woods and could not be found. When at last he felt the danger was over, he went back home, and Kirsten nearly fainted with joy at the sight of the money he had brought home.
"Now that we're rich people, we must build a bigger house,"
cried she, and was vexed to find when Peder only shook his head and said, "No, if we did that, people would talk, and they've got their wealth by ill-doing." A few mornings later, Hans came again. "Be off before you get us into trouble," said his father. "So far money's come right enough, but I don't trust it."
"Don't worry over that, father," said Hans. "Tomorrow you will find a horse outside by the gate. Ride it to market and you will get $1,000 for it. Only don't forget to loosen the bridle when you sell it."
Well, in the morning, there was the horse. Kirsten had never seen so fine an animal.
"Take care that you don't hurt you, Peder," she said.
"Nonsense, wife," answered he crossly. "When I was a lad I lived with horses, and could ride anything for 20 miles round." But that was not quite the truth, for he had never mounted a horse in his life. So the animal was quiet enough, so Peder got safely to market on its back. There he met a man who offered $999 for it. But Peder would take nothing less than 1,000. At last there came an old gray-bearded man who looked at the horse and agreed to buy it. But the moment he touched it, the horse began to kick and plunge. "I must take the bridle off," said Peder. "It is not to be sold with the animal, and this is usually the case." "I'll give you $100 for the bridle," said the old man, taking out his purse. "No, I can't sell it," replied the man's father. "$500. "No." "1,000." At this splendid offer, Petter's prudence gave way, and it was, shame to let so much money go away. So he agreed to accept it, but he could hardly hold the horse. It became so unmanageable. So he gave the animal charge to the old man and went home with $2,000. Harrison, of course, was delighted at this new piece of good fortune, and so insisted that a new house should be built and land bought. This time Peter considered, and soon they had quite a fine farm. Meanwhile, the old man rode off with his new purchase, and when he came to a smithy and asked the smith to forge shoes for the horse, the smith proposed that they should first have a drink together, if the horse was tied up by the spring whilst they went indoors. The day was hot, and both men were thirsty, and besides, they had much to say. So the hours slipped by and found them still talking. Then a servant girl came out to fetch a pail of water, and, being a kind-hearted lass, she gave some to the horse to drink. What was her surprise when the animal said to her,
"Take off my bridle, and you will save my life."
"I dare not," she said. "Your master will be so angry."
"He cannot hurt you," said the horse, "and you will save my life."
At that she took off the bridle, and nearly fainted with astonishment, when the horse turned into a dove and flew away, just as the old man came out of the house. Directly he saw what happened, he changed himself into a hawk and flew after the dove. Over the woods and fields they went, and at length they reached the king's palace, surrounded by beautiful gardens. The princess was walking with her attendants in the rose garden when the dove turned itself into a gold ring and fell at her feet.
"Why, here is a ring!" she cried. "Where could it have come from?"
And picked it up and put it on her finger. As she did, the hillman lost his power over Hans, for, of course, you understand that he had been the dog, the cow, the horse, and the dove.
"Well, that is really strange," said the princess. "It fits me as though it had been made for me."
Just at that moment up came the king.
"Look what I've found!" cried his daughter.
"Well, that is not worth very much, my dear," he said. "Besides, you have rings enough, I should think."
"Never mind, I like it," said the princess.
But as soon as she was alone, to her amazement, the ring suddenly left her finger and became a man. You can imagine how frightened she was, as indeed anyone would have been, but in an instant the man became a ring again, and then turned into a man, and so it went on for some time until she began to get used to the sudden changes. "I'm sorry I frightened you," said Hans, when he thought he could safely speak to the princess without making her scream. "I took refuge with you because of the old hillman whom I offended was trying to kill me, and here I am safe."
"You had better stay here, then," said the princess.
So Hans stayed, and he and she became good friends, though, of course, he only became a man when no one else was present. This was all very well, but one day as they were walking together, the king happened to enter the room, and although Hans quickly changed himself into a ring again, it was too late. The king was enraged. "So is this why you've refused to marry all the kings and princes who have sought your hand?" he asked. And without waiting for her to speak, he commanded that his daughter should be walled up in the summer house and starved to death with her lover. That evening, the poor princess, still wearing the ring, was put into the summer house with enough food to last for 3 days, and the door was bricked up. But at the end of the week or two, the king thought it was time to give her a grand funeral, in spite of her bad behavior, and he opened the summer house, and he could hardly believe his eyes when he found that the princess was not there, nor Hans either. Instead, there lay at the feet a large hole big enough for 2 people to pass through. Now, what had happened was this. When the princess and Hans had given hope and cast themselves down to the ground to die, they fell down into this hole, and right through the earth as well. And at last they tumbled into a castle built of pure gold on the other side of the world, and there they lived happily, but this, of course, the king knew nothing of. Will anyone go down and see what this passage leads to? He asked, turning to his guards and courtiers. I will reward splendidly the man who is brave enough to explore it. For a long time, nobody answered. The hole was dark and deep, and if it had a bottom, no one could see it. At length, the soldier, who was a careless sort of fellow, offered himself for the service and cautiously lowered himself into the darkness. But in a moment, too, he fell down, down, down. He was going to fall forever, he wondered. Oh, how thankful he was to reach the end in the castle and to meet the princess and Hans, looking quite well, not at all as if they had been starved. They began to talk, and the soldier told them that the king was very sorry for the way he had treated his daughter, and wished day and night that he could have her back. Then they all took a ship and sailed home, and when they came to the princess's country, Hans disguised himself as the sovereign of a neighboring kingdom, and went up to the palace alone. He was given a hearty welcome by the king, who prided himself on his hospitality, and a banquet was commanded in his honor. That evening, whilst they were drinking their wine, Hans said to the king, I have heard the fame of your majesty's kingdom, and I have travelled from far to ask your counsel. A man in my country has buried his daughter alive because she loved a youth who was born a peasant. How shall I punish this unnatural father? For it was left to me to give judgment. The king, who was still truly grieved for his daughter's loss, answered him quickly. I burned him alive and strew his ashes over the kingdom. Hans looked at him steadily for a moment, then threw off his disguise. You are the man, he said, and I am he who loved your daughter, and became the gold ring on her finger. She is safe and waiting not far from here, but you have pronounced judgment on yourself. Then the king fell on his knees and begged for mercy, and as he had in other respects been a good father, they forgave him. The wedding of Hans and the princess was celebrated with great festivities, which lasted a month. As for the hillman, he intended to be present, but while he was walking on the street which led to the palace, a stone fell loose and landed on his head, killing him. So Hans and the princess lived in peace and happiness in all their days, and when the old king died, they reigned in his stead.